So Jesus was on the cross and he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Taking everyone there to Psalm 22. But what happened just before that? There was darkness. It was pitch black. Forget this. For 3 hours, the Gospels record that. And there's actually secular historians that have said the same thing. There was a darkness so thick you can feel it when Jesus died on the cross. So then what happened? Suddenly and unexpectedly, it was light out like the dawn of a new day, and Jesus cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why did he say that? That's the opening words of Psalm 22, right? He was taking everyone to the psalm that's titled the dawn, like the dawn of a new day, Eliyah Shachar, the dawn of a new day. And he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Taking everyone to Psalm 22. He did that for a reason, my friend. It was written 1,000 years before Christ by David, and it was as if David was looking through the eyes of Jesus on the cross. Amazing, amazing stuff. And he pronounces the first statement of that psalm there. So it's the psalm of the dawn of a new day. And we in it, you can see that they cast lots for my clothing. That's what they were doing with Jesus, right? The Roman soldiers. They pierced my hands and my feet. That is in there. That was in the original from the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was those words, they pierced or bored through my hands and my feet. So in verse 6, you see this interesting statement, but I am a worm and no man, or not a person. What is that about? Well, that word in Hebrew for worm is tola or tola shani. That means crimson worm or scarlet worm, like a red worm. And this is where ancient Israel got the dye for the fabrics. Here's what it looked like in a close-up. It's about 7 millimeters across. It's a pretty tiny little thing, but it climbs up trees and they stick themselves to the trees, and that ancient Israel would scrape them off the trees, dry them out to get the dye material. And this is what this is. It's a cochineal worm. You can get this on Amazon. And these are dried little tolas or tolath shani, the cochineal or Kermes worm is what they're called. And it's more like a grub, but this is where ancient Israel would get their dye. They would dry them out like this, crush them into powder, right? So they would collect them, and then they would crush them and collect them off the trees, crush them and give them into this red, turn them into this red powder, which is perfect for making the red dye. And that's where ancient Israel got the dye for the high priest, right? I'm sorry, for the ephod that the high priest wore, for the scarlet sashes, the red sashes for the priests, for the veil of the temple. This is where they got that. The tapestries, this is where they would get the red dye. The scarlet worm from the scapegoat, it all came from that little crimson worm, the tola. But that's interesting, right? Because Psalm 22 verse 6 says, I am a worm, or I am a tola and no man. This is what it looks like in a cup. I've crushed some and poured it into this cup. That's what it looks like. It's like dark red, like a red wine. So we saw that they cast lots for my clothing. They pierced my hands and my feet. Speaking of this psalm. And then at the end of the psalm, it says, he has done it. He has done it. This is what you might read in your Bible. But that word in Hebrew is asa, which means it is accomplished. It is finished. And we know that Jesus cried that same thing out from the cross right before he died. He said, tetelestai, which means it is accomplished. It is finished. It is paid in full. Same as that Hebrew word. It has been done. It is accomplished. Wow. So the similarities are amazing, my friend. But back to that psalm, or the crimson worm, we can look at that right now, and you can see how they would scrape these off of the tree, and it is a picture of the cross. And this, my friend, I crushed some just a little while ago, and you could see that this water has turned into this dark, it's turning into this crimson red color, the same that they would get from the ancient Israel from crushing those. But this thing would literally climb up a tree one time in its life and stick itself to the tree to do what? To give life to their offspring. So when you read that verse 6 in Psalm 22, where it says, I am a worm, I am a tola, and no man, it's speaking about this. And this creature would climb up a tree, stick itself to the trunk or a limb of the tree, and it would swell up and turn crimson red and burst open when it died. And the millions of little babies would literally eat of its flesh, drink of its blood to live, and they would be dyed that same crimson red color for the rest of their lives. And check this out. There would be a red stain where it burst open on that tree for, get this, 3 days. And after 3 days, it would turn as white as snow. You could see it starting to turn white up here a little bit, but it would turn as white as snow, like a snowflake, and it would fall to the ground like manna, like the frost, the manna, the bread of heaven, which speaks of Jesus too, right? And that's just a huge picture of the cross, my friend. I wrote a book about it, Tola Sheni, the Crimson Worm of Psalm 22 by George Crabb. You can check it out on Amazon or other bookstores, but it might bless you. But if you want to just watch free content, you can click on this playlist right here, How to Find Jesus in the Old Testament. You can subscribe to my channel. It's all free content. It's free to subscribe. Hit the like button. It'll help get it out there. I love you, my friend.